1963, a guy by the name of Bob Richards, who probably most of you have never heard of, he was a pole vaulting champion on the U.S. Olympic team. And he made a comment which stuck with me that I heard the other day, and I said, wow. He said, the Lord must have loved ordinary people because he made a lot of them. And yet, every single day, you see ordinary people do extraordinary things. I'd like to believe we saw some of that happen tonight. But how do you get there? Because what makes this event so exciting for me is we don't have superstars. We have people like you and I, people that I can relate to. So how do you go from being ordinary to extraordinary? Well, I had my whole speech put together, you know, a lot like everyone else. So what I tell the young people to do is have it collected in your mind, start rehearsing it, practicing it. And I made the mistake this morning of waking up about 6 o'clock. And Chubba didn't mention this in his speech, but Erickson did a few years ago. And so many people today, when they wake up in the morning, the first thing they do is they touch their phone. And so I touched my smartphone and I started reading emails, and I got an email sent to me by a gal, a friend of mine from Denver. She's a Hungarian gal, name is Timi, and she sends me this email, and I watched this 10-minute video and I thought, oh my goodness. It's a 17-year-old boy, his name is Sam Burns, and he's got this interesting disease known as Pregori. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of that disease. I certainly hadn't heard of it until this morning. 350 people have Pregoria in the world. We're talking unbelievably rare. And what it amounts to, and this 17-year-old kid is on stage giving a speech, he's in the body of a 65-year-old person. So if you see it, if you go home tonight, go ahead and Google it, Sam Burns, Pregoria, and you'll see a TED speech that he gave that brought tears to my eyes this morning. And I figured, oh my goodness, so how do I take that and how do I take what I wanted to talk about? And how do I mix them and then kind of bring in a little bit of what we heard tonight? And then somehow I believe in magic. So I like, you know, Subbolt, you believe in marriage, you believe in magic, I believe in magic, it all comes together. So here's this kid who's got a horrible life. And what does he use for rules? Because he's got to get out of bed in the morning, and he's got to navigate life in a way that most of us will never understand. And the first thing that he said that touched my heart is he says, don't concentrate on the things you can't do. Concentrate on the things you can do, because there's so much to do. And so I look at that, and here's a guy who clearly is not ordinary. He's extraordinary already. That's the way he was born, from 22 months on. And he starts telling them something. And so my original speech was, there are 3 things we like to do with the help of Peter and Steve. And the first one, I will use the word of will. What I want, and it's not my name, what I want to do, or what we want to do, is create the desire, the will for people to do something better. You know, the interesting thing about life, no matter how good you are, how smart you are, or if you speak 4.5 languages and are about to get your PhD in IT, and figured out how to communicate with a cab driver in Japan, none of us have reached our limits. We're all so unbelievably fortunate. If you look at this video, you'll know what I mean. So when we try to create the desire for people to improve, that's goal number 1. And all I can do is share Sam's story with you and say, hey, don't concentrate on what you can't do. Concentrate on what you can. And I'm so excited when I hear about stories. I mean, first of all, if you listen to the people who spoke in this room today, you're not talking about people who've decided to take an early retirement and lean back as they can. You're talking about people who are making a major contribution to their companies, and they're intent on making a major contribution to life. So we have succeeded, they have succeeded, whether it is from us, from others, to gain this desire to improve. And they're not concentrating on things they can't do, but they're concentrating on things they can do. Number two, Sam will tell you that you need to surround yourself with people who really care and who really love you. And we know from all sorts of support groups, if you ever talk to Andrea Yuhos, you'll know in her work that she deals with a lot of people. And the support that they give at the right moment can work magic in those people's lives. And so the next thing we want to do is when somebody gets the desire to improve, then once we've got the will, then we try to add the skill. And we try to be those people in that person's life who's taking a huge risk. Because these people, you can see, they're CEOs, they're business leaders, they don't need to do this. And yet they're willing to take that risk, and our job is to make sure that when they make a mistake, and they will make a mistake, we catch them before they fall. So little did I know before I listened to that YouTube video this morning, or that TED video this morning, that Sam was already somehow here sharing his message with us. So now we surround ourselves with people who will support us. And then the third thing we like to do is once we've been able to transfer that skill, and I think today we can draw a line in the sand and say that that skill has been transferred to a lot of these people. For those of you who've seen some of these people speak earlier, and you can compare them today, there's a magnificent difference. And so now what they need to do is they need to go back and they need to refill. They need to go back and they need to sharpen their skills. You know, the problem with public speaking is once you start getting better, anytime you go to a funeral, or not a funeral, but a family event, a wedding, okay, put me at a funeral too. Right, but anywhere, anytime you go to an event where you got to speak, people can start pushing you to, you speak. You speak. And there's just some burden that once you start down this path, you start doing it. And you got to go back and you refill and you hone your skills. We talked about what could we add to this, and then you get a little better and you go out and give another speech. And all of a sudden you start doing it in such a way, and you do it so well, that you light a spark under somebody else. And now you never were intent on becoming a salesperson for what you just acquired, but you're doing it so well now you create a spark for somebody else. And this Sam, I looked at them and I said, this is unbelievable. I mean, here's a 17-year-old kid who's on stage and he's sharing his philosophy with people. And we can learn a lot from this kid because unfortunately, I'm sure he'll be going his rounds on social media. Fortunately, he passed away on Friday. But he leaves an indelible mark in our souls and hopefully in your souls, because you'll take this message with you. And you realize that, wow, here's a guy, extraordinary in a bad way, maybe. But he can take that message, and just like my friend Timmy, who never thought, last night when she hit the enter button, that the following day, 8,000 kilometers away, that one movement on her part will touch the lives of 100 people. And I'll tell you, the life has a really interesting way. Once you start, you move, you get active, you start doing things, you improve yourself, you try to improve those around you, and magic happens, and opportunities appear. You know, let's look back at what we heard today. We heard about the value of languages from Norbert. But go back to Gabler. Do you remember what Gabler's one rule for you was today? 0, 20. Right? Then Steve told us to practice this language and use it. And then Chubba said, hey, one day a robot will be knocking on your kid's door. What are you going to do to get that kid ready? And then we hear about marriage. And we hear about marriage. When I first heard Nikki's speech, can you imagine what I thought? I didn't even know her husband. And I wanted to kill him. And I'm a Christian. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And I know we're lucky because we saw these, Steve and Peter, where are you? We saw these things blossom and open up. And a few months ago, we probably all thought, there's no chance. that we'll ever be able to put on a show, that anybody will ever be interested in what we have to say. Chaba, how do you feel today?
Awesome.
Awesome! And it was an unbelievable job on his part. And so what I want to encourage everybody to do is figure out what that area is in your life. Since we've pretty much come to the conclusion that none of us have reached our capacity. Where's that area that we can improve? And where's that area that we can help somebody else improve? Because I tell you, I get a lot of, I win in these cases. Because they think they got a lot out of this course, but I know that I got a lot out of the course, and I know I speak for Steve, and I know I speak for Peter. Because when you see human lives transformed from your very eyes, then you realize, wow, the effort was well worth it. Judith. Wow. Right? The youngest gal in this class. When I first met her 7 months ago after she got back from Denver, she probably thought I was crazy. We had coffee in a McDonald's. A McDonald's! And this is what that coffee at McDonald's results in. Because she was willing to take the risk. Yet, I bet you if you privately interviewed her, she says, this is insanity. I have no business being on stage with business leaders. I just got back from the US. I loved it. I had a great experience. And then she turns it into a wonderful speech that most of us, if not all of us, will take away just a little bit of beauty tonight. Nothing fantastic happened. There's no voodoo here. There are ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And the message that I'd like to leave you with tonight is think about it. It's not that complicated. What can you do if it's not a robot knocking on your door? But what can you do for a kid, for a neighbor, for a colleague that has the ability, just doesn't, as Andreas said, doesn't have the self-confidence? What can you do to instill a bit of self-confidence in them so they're willing to take that first step? Because it was a long road to get here. If you ask Nikki, I'm not sure, maybe, Nikki, were you nervous?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So that's living proof that Nikki is a normal human being. Because people hate this. This ain't a little bit, they hate this. It's not like trying to figure out Excel. People hate this. But once they overcome a fear and they face a challenge, it will change them forever. And so I'm not telling anybody for public speaking to be your thing. It works for some people and it doesn't work for others, but I tell you what, if it's not public speaking, it's something else out there. And I know enough people in here, whether it's young people like Andris and Ferenc who do unbelievable things in the lab when they create these designs. There's a person I promised myself I wouldn't mention her name. And so I won't mention that it's Christy. And Christy makes pastries. She's a young gal, incredible gal. She makes pastries. And what's incredible when Christy puts a pastry in front of you is your first reaction is not to reach for your fork. Your first reaction is to reach for your smartphone and take a picture of it. Because that pastry has more than 3 layers of chocolate and a little bit of whipped cream. And when you see people put their heart and their soul into what they deliver to you, then you go back to what Gabor talked about, that little mint floating around in your mint tea, and it doesn't cost any extra to put that extra effort into it. And if I'm not a fitness guru, I do like to exercise, but they tell you, I asked them once, I said, what's the most valuable time spent running or bicycling? And the answer was the last minute. So if you put that last extra effort into it, that's where the magic happens, and I promise you, every one of us in this room is capable of that magic. And so I hope you take that home with you tonight, that we're all capable of helping either ourselves go from ordinary people to extraordinary people, or we rise a little bit higher than that, and we start helping other people down that path. And you can see tonight that there are people today who are equipped to take their passion and share it with others and light fires. And I don't believe in building countries from top down, I believe in building them from the bottom up. And I really believe that there are people in this country that are capable of magic, and they're capable of magic in this room, and they're capable of it outside this room. So all I want to do is encourage each and every one of you. Look at that video and learn from a 17-year-old boy that looks like a 65-year-old. And his last piece of advice is always be looking forward to something. Always have a goal, always have something that drives you. Because when you do, you forget about your problem. We all have problems. But there's magic on the other side of the problems. And I encourage you to take that first step. Thank you for having us here tonight. And thank you for letting us share with you the work and effort that went into the last 9 months. Good night.